What's going on YouTube? While sedans are declining in popularity in the United States, the Corolla is still the best-selling vehicle in the entire world. So globally, you could consider this the most important redesign of the year, which is why we are checking out this aggressively styled SE today at Frankfurt Toyota. Of course, if you're in the market for any new Toyota, be sure to stop by their dealership or visit them via their website, which we provided a link to in the video description. So with that said, let's check out the most dynamic Corolla ever. So getting started here with the all-new exterior. Like I said, this is definitely the most aggressive Corolla to date. The grille itself is actually smaller than the outgoing model, but the new shape makes it appear lower and wider than before. Now, just like all Toyota sedans, there are sport and regular designs. So the SE and XSE get this look, while the L, LE, and XLE get a more subdued design. However, for the headlights, all the models are going to come with premium LED lights. And the majority of models will also have these fancier 3-part LED running lights and the LED turn signal. Down below, there are no longer fog lights on any model, but SE and XSE come with another strip of accent lights. Moving on to the side, the new Corolla is pretty much the same size as the outgoing model, but nearly 12 inches larger than the hatchback version, most of that going to the rear seats. As far as the styling, it is now a lot more streamlined, and that does flow nicely into the much more aggressive rear design. All models get the black accent across the trunk lid, which connects the partially LED taillights. SE and XSE add the spoiler, as well as this nice looking rear diffuser and the dual chrome tipped exhaust pipes. So overall, Toyota has done a great job of infusing some personality into the Corolla. And it's nice that customers have the choice between two distinct designs. Now, as far as the wheels, they also vary between the trims. So both sport trims will come with these really good looking 18-inch contrast alloys. The XLE also comes with alloy wheels, just 16 inches, and then the L and LE come with steel wheels and hubcaps at 15 and 16 inches respectively. Moving on to the mirrors, they are heated on all but the base model, and the X trims come standard with blind spot monitoring. Of course, as you can see, the SE as well as the LE can also add it through the premium package. Now, just like the old Corolla, all the rest of the active safety features are standard across the board, including some new ones for 2019. Safety Sense 2.0 adds low light and cyclist detection to the automatic emergency braking, adaptive cruise that now works all the way to a stop, lane tracing assist and road sign detection, in addition to lane keeping assist and auto high beam headlights. Overall, this is really an unprecedented level of safety features to have as standard equipment in an entry-level car. Finally, the last place we'll visit is the 13.2 gallon fuel tank. Now, there are a lot of different fuel economies, so I won't run through them all. But this SE with CVT achieves 449 miles of range on regular unleaded fuel. Anyways, that's it for the redesigned exterior. So now let's see if Toyota has done as much work to the interior. So on your X trims, you do have the standard smart entry system. However, on this SE as well as the LE, you can option it on via the premium package. As you can see, it does come with this nice new Toyota key fob with the specific branding. And then of course, to get inside, there is a sensor behind the handle, so all you have to do is grab it. Alright, so checking out the cabin of the all-new Toyota Corolla. It is very, very different from the outgoing model. However, at the same time, it's also very similar to the hatchback we saw last year. Now, as far as the colors and materials you can get inside this cabin, Most of the models L through SE come with cloth seating. However, when you go up to the XLE, you get Softex synthetic leather, and the XSE has Softex leather with sport inserts. And then as far as the colors, most of them have the options between black, light gray, and beige. However, the XSE has a special color option, which is black with blue inserts. Now turning over here to your door trim, it is pretty nice for a vehicle in this class. You have a nice leatherette area through here with some blue color contrast stitching, and then even this top part is nicely padded. Now as far as your windows, surprisingly all 4 are fully automatic, which is a nice touch in this class. Heading down here to your seats, these are your basic 6-way manual seats that come on the L through the SE. And then when you go up to the XLE or the XSE, you get an 8-way power seat instead. Then like I was saying, this is of course cloth seating. However, it's got a really premium feel to it and a really unique design, particularly like this color contrast stitching and this design right here in the middle. So it definitely looks a lot fancier than you'd expect. So like I already said, those of you familiar with the hatchback that just came out last year, you notice the cabin is mostly unchanged from that model, and that is a good thing. So as far as your materials, they are quite nice. You've got a soft touch plastic that runs across the entire upper dash, and then moving down to this middle portion, you've got this leatherette with a stitching detail that really classes things up. Now down here in your lower areas, they are of course hard touch. But you do have this leatherette detail here to class things up, and everything fits together a lot better and feels a lot more solid than it did last year. So like I already said, we do have the optional push button start. When you press it, you'll actually find this large 8-inch display standard on most of the trims except for the very base L, which comes with a slightly smaller 7-inch display. Now, just like the hatchback model, you will notice that there are 2 different gauge clusters to choose from. On your lower end models, which would be the L, LE, and SE, you've got this setup, which is mostly analog gauges, and then a 4.2-inch multifunction display here on the right side. However, if you go for one of those X trims, you're going to have a 7-inch digital display. This does, however, still display all the standard fare of information, like your trip, audio, as well as the settings for all your different safety systems. Now coming back here to the steering wheel, it is electric power assisted, and on the SE and up you will find this nice leather wrapped wheel. Definitely a nicer feeling leatherette than in the previous generation as well. These buttons correspond with your multifunction display as well as your phone, audio, and voice controls. And then over here you got some safety system shortcuts as well as your adaptive cruise control. Of course, as far as the wheel itself, it is manually tilt and telescoping. But anyways, moving on to interior storage, it actually has a pretty impressive amount for a vehicle in this class. So starting out with your center console, as you can see, it is reasonably sized, and you also have a nice felt lining down here at the bottom. And inside you'll find a 12-volt outlet as well as a charging USB port. I also want to say this looks and feels very nice as well. In front of that you've got your 2 cup holders. And in the very front, you've got a large bin, which is a great place to stick a phone. And then on your X trims, you can option that to be a Qi wireless phone charger, or you can just use the regular USB port and aux jack right there. Heading over to your shifter, it is just a traditional shifter, so obviously you pull back for drive. Then you can bump over here to shift manually through the simulated gear changes. And then on your SE and your XSE, you'll also have paddle shifters. Heading into reverse, you will find a standard backup camera across all models. As you can see, we have guidance lines, however we do not have active trajectory. And that sound you may have heard was the sound of the electronic parking brake automatically engaging. So unlike a lot of rivals, you don't have to press anything, it will automatically engage and disengage. And you do also have a brake hold feature as well. Now the next thing up the dash is your climate controls. This is the single zone automatic setup that comes standard on all the trims, except the X trims, which come with a dual zone automatic setup. So of course this is very simple to use. You just adjust your temperature over here on the left side, and then you can adjust your fan speeds over on the right side, and your zones right here in the middle. And it definitely looks very classy as well. And now that brings us up here to our audio systems. Now every model comes standard with a 6-speaker sound system. However, optional on the SE, XSE, and XLE is an 800 watt 9-speaker JBL sound system, which is what we have. Now unfortunately I'm not going to be able to give you a sample today because phone will not pair to this system for whatever reason, but I am sure this probably sounds pretty good. Anyways, now let's go ahead and look at the Entune 3.0 system. Now getting started with the system, this is your home screen. You can click on any of these sections to jump straight into it. So starting off with your Bluetooth audio, you can play and pause straight from here. Off on the side, you can also press the source button, and this will show you all your available sources. These are the same apps you're used to seeing in Toyotas, but the big deal this year is the addition of Apple CarPlay. Now when you plug in your phone through the USB port, it would appear right here. But other than that, that pretty much concludes the Entune system. But if you want to see a really detailed tutorial, then be sure to check out our dedicated tech help video. A link to that is provided in the video description. Moving on up, the SE does come with a manually dimming mirror. However, on this SE, we actually have the optional power moonroof. This would be a standard feature on the XSE and XLE, but like I said, it is optional here on the SE. And it is worth noting that the hatchback can't get a moonroof at all, so it's nice to see that here on the sedan. But overall, I have to say, I'm impressed by the Corolla's cabin. This is simply a lot more premium of a space than in the outgoing generation, and they've really added a lot of technology and luxury features that make this feel significantly higher caliber than it used to. But anyways, now I'll go ahead and hand it off to Mason, who will finish up the rest of the cabin.
So checking out the rear seats of the all-new 2020 Toyota Corolla, you're going to find a really large amount of space. You'll find 41.4 inches of rear legroom and 37.7 inches of rear headroom, which does make it have even more legroom than the Honda Civic, which is already at the top of the class. Now turning over here to the door trim, it is finished really nicely for a base vehicle like this. So we do have a leather-wrapped armrest with blue stitching, and the top portion is a hard-touch plastic. Your rear windows are auto down, and below that you do have a little bit of door storage. Turning over to the seat itself, it is a really nice design. It is cloth here in the SE model, and you do have blue color contrast stitching. Now here in the center, you will find a little storage bin on this Corolla. However, you will not find heated rear seats or outlets or anything like that on any model. Over here in the center area, you do have a fold-down armrest, which is a nice touch. It's nice and long, and it has cup holders in the end. Up top, we have some lighting, a nice headliner, as well as an assist grip and coat hook. Now behind Drew's seating position, like I said, this has about the most legroom in the class, and that definitely shows. So I have about 4 to 5 inches of rear legroom, and my feet can easily slide up under the seat. And sliding over, even with the seat scooted all the way back, I still have several inches of rear legroom, so this is a very spacious car for this class. But overall, I really like the rear seat of the Toyota Corolla. It's a really spacious and comfortable area, and it really fits the needs of what the buyers want in this class. Now coming around to the trunk, all you have to do is locate the button under the lid and it will open right up. Now once inside, you're going to find 13.1 cubic feet of space on this sedan model, and that does place it a little bit behind the Honda Civic for reference. However, that is to say there is plenty of space back here, so as you can see we have our camera equipment as far as some coats as well. And as you can tell, the seats do fold 60-40 split if you need more space. And coming to the passenger seat is that same nice design, and as you would expect, it is manually adjusting on all trims. Now in front of the passenger, we do have really nice materials for a car in this class. So we have a padded dashboard, and down below that, we have a good sized glove box, and it is also nicely dampened. Up top, we do have a sun visor with the mirror and light, and it does also detach and have an extension in the end. But overall, that sums up all the rear areas of the all-new 2020 Corolla. So now let's go ahead and get to the powertrain and take it on a quick test drive.
Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the powertrains that Toyota has selected. Now there are two different options depending on which trim level you select. So you start out with a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder, and that's essentially the same as what you had in the LE Eco last year. That produces 139 horsepower and 126 pound-feet of torque, and that's the standard engine on the L, LE, and XLE. Now when you go for the sport-oriented trims, which would be your SE and your XSE, you're going to get upgraded to the 2-liter Dynamic Force 4-cylinder. That is all new. And that makes quite a bit more horsepower, 168 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque, which is 31 horsepower more than the outgoing model. Heading into your transmissions, they also vary depending on which trim level you select. So your luxury-oriented L, LE, and XLE come with a conventional CVT. However, when you go for the SE or the XSE, you have the Dynamic Shift CVT, which basically comes with a physical first gear and then switches to a CVT, and together it simulates 10 gear changes. Finally, the SE can option on a manual 6-speed manual transmission, which is pretty rare for the class at this point. Finally, for your fuel economy, there is a great deal of variance between the trim levels, so I'm not going to rattle it all off here. But I will point out that surprisingly, what we're in, the SE with CVT, is actually the most efficient trim level of the whole bunch.
That's crazy.
So this one is rated at 31 city, 40 on the highway, 34 combined, which is definitely on the top end of the class. When you can hit that 40 number is very impressive. And then all the other trims go down from there. And of course, we do have a hybrid Corolla now this year. We'll cover that in a separate video, but that gets Prius type fuel economy if you really want that extreme fuel economy. But anyways, now let's go ahead and take this for a quick spin. So first taking off in the 2020 Corolla, initial acceleration is actually pretty good. This, of course, like I already mentioned, is the more powerful of the engine options, being the SE. Now this is my first time driving this new transmission with the physical gear and the CVT, and I will say it makes for an interesting feel, you know, to have that first shift clearly be a physical traditional shift and then switch over to a CVT. However, it works very seamlessly, and I definitely understand why they're doing it, because this does away with any type of lag or stuff that you might experience traditionally with the CVT straight off the line. This does away with it. You launch just like you do in a traditional car, and then you switch over to your CVT for that maximum fuel economy to get that 40 mpg. So I actually think this is a really good idea, a really good setup. Kind of combines the two ideas to make a good overall feel.
Exactly. I mean, this car is not meant to be a sporty or performance car or anything like that. And it doesn't trick you into thinking that it is really. I mean, I didn't, when we were under harder acceleration, I didn't really feel the 10 simulated gears or whatever they say that. But definitely the traditional gear I thought felt good. A lot better than some of the just straight CVT options.
I'm also noticing a big improvement in the steering and the ride and handling. This has never been a sports car for sure, but the new TNGA platform definitely does wonders. Just corners a lot flatter, and then Toyota has definitely worked to make the steering a lot more responsive. It responds instantly. It doesn't feel so dead like previous versions have with the electronic power steering. And it does feel nicely weighted. This, of course, is still pretty light, you know, for maneuvering in the city and whatnot. But it definitely is a big improvement over what previous Corollas have had. Yeah, it's definitely got an agility that it did not used to have, for sure.
That's really a great thing, because this car does keep all of the signature Corolla values, but its main issue is really its driving dynamics, and to see that Toyota has actually added some of that back, that's a great thing for this Corolla.
And this is overall just a lot more upscale of an experience as well. Now, I will mention this does not have auto start stop, so that could be considered a pro for some of you guys. And we'll also go ahead and try out the sport mode, see if that makes any difference taking off from this light. The response is definitely more sensitive, straight from the line. You also have more of an enhanced shift simulation.
Yeah, it's definitely better. And I think that the power actually feels really good in this car.
Of course, it is not going to knock your socks off, but for this type of car, this is definitely an improvement. You know, these cars, they can be really, really slow, and it just doesn't feel really, really slow.
Now, it is worth noting that this is the upgraded engine for the SE, so we'll have to reserve our commentary of the lower powertrain options. But
right, but I mean, based on what we know about the power, you've got significantly more power, and that this is also the most fuel-efficient version of the Corolla. I would highly recommend looking at the SE or the XSE trim levels to get that versus the lower powered, less fuel efficient engine. But overall, I'm pretty impressed by the way this drives. This is definitely a big improvement over the outgoing model. You've got, more power and big improvements as far as the steering, transmission, ride quality. Definitely just a more upscale experience overall than what it used to be, for sure.
Alrighty, and let's discuss the pricing of this 2020 Toyota Corolla here for a minute. Now, you will notice that the pricing is a little bit less than some of the rivals' starting price. So for the L trim, it comes in at $19,500. The LE is $19,950. And then as you move up to the SE, which is what we have here, that starts at $21,950. And that is worth noting that that is the CVT model, and if you want the SE 6-speed manual version, that's going to come in a little bit more expensive because it has more standard equipment at $22,650. Then you have the XLE trim, which is a luxury-oriented model, and that's $23,950. And finally, you have the top-end XSE, which has the luxury and the sport, and that is $25,450. Now, as far as how this particular model is equipped, we have opted for the SE CVT model, and we do have quite a few option packages on top of that. We have the JBL audio system, which is $1,415, the SE Premium package for $1,500, paint protection film for $395, a door edge guard for $125, alloy wheel locks for $67, as well as all-weather floor liners for $249. And then finally, when you add in the $930 destination charge, this particular model, as equipped, is $26,631, which I will admit is pretty expensive for this trim level here, but you could definitely opt for a little less option packages and have this car be about $23,000.
Right. There's a lot of crossing over between the trim levels. Like there's an XLE over there, actually cost about $1,000 less. So you can definitely let you choose which options you want on different trim levels.
Well guys, we've enjoyed watching this in-depth look at the all-new 2020 Toyota Corolla SE. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.
Mm-hmm.